Hi, my name is Kelvin Newman and welcome to the Brighton SEO podcast, where we share talks from one of the world's most popular search and marketing conferences. The event started out as a few people meeting in an upstairs room of a pub and is now attended by over 3,000 people from all over the world. This episode is a recording of one of the speakers at a recent event.
My first speaker for today is Arianne Donoghue from Epiphany, who is going to be talking about the paid search or the PPC Automation Revolution. So please give her a warm welcome. Thank you. We will do Q&A at the end, so if you could stock up your questions, we'll have all the speakers back on stage afterwards.
Oops, lovely technical challenge there just before I begin. So, the PPC Automation Revolution is coming, and what are we going to do about it? As things stand at the moment, we're in a very real chance of the robots putting us out of work in the next couple of years, if not at the moment. There's plenty of doom and gloom stories in the media about how that's going to happen. Does anybody know what this is? So for those of you who don't know, I live in Leeds, and this is in a town called Murfield, a few miles outside of Leeds. And a couple of hundred years ago, an army gathered on this very spot before going to storm a mill. Any idea who those people might have been? Yes. So the word Luddite has become synonymous with someone who either has a bit of a fear of technology or is just not very good with technology. It initially was a group of people who fought against the rise of the Industrial Revolution. They saw these new machines coming in. They thought that they were going to be essentially put out of jobs, which turned out to be true, and that all the skills and the knowledge that they had as craftspeople would be lost forever. And so they made the decision to try and burn these machines down. Hence why they gathered in this spot. They lived on the brink of the Industrial Revolution, and we today, having lived through many different ages and revolutions in our time as mankind, are on the verge of another revolution, moving from the information age that we find ourselves in now to the automation age. You could argue that it's already begun. It's not something that's going to happen, it's something that is already happening. And so I want to talk to you specifically today about PPC automation, how you can decide whether or not you want to embrace the automation as it stands right now and this revolution and get behind it, or whether, like the Luddites, you want to rebel, fight, and maybe get left behind. I have a key takeaway for you today. My key takeaway for you is to embrace it. If you embrace PPC automation properly, it should have a number of benefits. You should be able to free up your time for more impactful work that's going to make more of a difference to your clients, and hopefully just help you enjoy your job more, which ultimately is something that we all want to do. So what are we, PPCers? What do we do day to day? We are what's known as knowledge workers. We don't work out in the fields anymore. We don't work on factory or production lines. Everything we do day to day revolves around what goes on in here, which means it can be difficult to maintain focus. It can be very mentally tiring by the time we've got to the end of a busy day. And it's interesting because in the 12 or so years that I've been doing PPC, it doesn't really feel like we've moved much further ahead. I first learned about automated bid management around 10 or 11 years ago. It was when eFrontier opened their first office here in the UK with a bid management tool. And I remember thinking at the time, God, what am I going to do if I can't change bids all day? Right? What is my job? What would my job become? I've got nothing to do. And then you kind of think about all the other things that you can do with your time, looking at structure, ad copy, landing pages, and doing a lot more to try and make things more engaging, more interesting. And yet in that time, in that 10 or so years, we've not really moved much further ahead, despite efforts by Google and others to have us adopt automation on a much bigger basis. So what I want you to know is whether you're ready to free your time and, more importantly, your mind. So we're going to break it down. We're going to focus on 3 key areas of PPC activity that can now be automated to some extent. And we're going to focus in on 3 of those. And what I want you to do is put your money away. We're going to focus on free or very, very cheap tools that you can use. I want this to be accessible. There are a number of free platforms available, platforms like Optimizer and Analysis, that can not only do the analysis for you, they can actually post the changes out to the search engines. But, you know, I want to keep the focus on everything that's free, everything that's easy to get to, so that anyone really can have a crack at doing this if they want to give it a go. So we're going to look at bidding. We're going to look at analysis, and we're going to look at reporting. Those are the three areas I'm going to go through. I'll be going quick fire in a minute through a number of different tools and things that you can use. I've tweeted out a link to the slides already. If you have a look on Twitter under the Brighton SEO hashtag or at my handle, you'll be able to see a link to the slides so you can follow along. And I've also put links to everything in an appendix right at the very back. There's also a few things that I won't be able to get through because of time constraints. I've got 102 slides as it is in 20 minutes, so can't fit everything in there, but I've got links to some other fun stuff in that appendix as well that you can hopefully have a look at and get some value from. But before we do that, I want to talk about your automation toolkit. So the things that you need to get to grips with automation, the stuff that you should start to be using day to day to really help you start to get ahead. Scripts. Does anybody here use Adwords Scripts already? Not as many hands as I was hoping to see, but a decent number. So there are two different kinds of scripts. You've got scripts that run in AdWords, and they change things in your account. It could be bids, it could be adding labels, it might be stuff like ad scheduling. And you also have scripts that run within something like Google Apps. So you can put a load of data into a Google Sheet, run a script, and then it visualizes it for you, arranges the data, and makes it really lovely to look at and interpret. They're not scary. It can initially seem quite scary because you run that risk of potentially screwing up something quite badly in your account, but I encourage you to try them and give them a go. They are quite accessible, and there's so many free scripts available online, and again, I've got links to a number of these in the appendix. Excel plugins. Excel is a tool that I'm sure we all use pretty much all day, every day. You spend your life in Excel, although now I feel like I spend my life in PowerPoint, but we all are using Excel on a daily basis, and there's a number of plugins that you can use that really can make life easier for you. The first one is ASAP Utilities. Has anyone come across this? Does anybody use it? One person, well done, whoever that is. This is a great tool that really supplements a lot of the functionality for Excel that doesn't really exist. So if you want to be able to unselect cells, or you want to be able to select things based on formatting or automate certain processes in Excel, this can do it for you. This comes at a small cost, but it's a very, very cheap tool for the value that it gives. Well worth checking out if you do a lot of work in Excel. It's great for creating templates, for helping you automate process, and if you do a lot of Excel-based reporting, it can really save you a ton of time. Analytics Edge. So most of us, I'm sure, if not all, will be using Google Analytics in some capacity. And one of the tasks that we all have to spend time doing every day is pulling that data from AdWords, pulling the data from Analytics, and combining it together in Excel. Using Analytics Edge, you can bring in the data from GA and refresh it with just a single click once you've set a report up. The other great thing is they have a number of plugins for other tools. You've got like Bing Ads up here, Facebook, AdWords, MailChimp, Moz, and so on. Those are paid for editions. The GA plugin is free, but if Excel is essential to your workflow, you've got tools here that you can use. Bing Ads Intelligence. Who uses Bing Ads Intelligence? This is the Bing room. Come on, there's got to be more than Simon put his hand up. This is a really, really great plugin, and anyone who came to my PPC training session yesterday will have heard me go on about how great this is. There's a number of areas in which this tool is really helpful for things like keyword research, traffic estimation, and I'm going to show you a little later on one of my favorite things that you can do with it. And finally, the Supermetrics Data Grabber. A number of you will probably be familiar with Supermetrics, but they have a data grabber for Excel that, again, if Excel is important to your workflow, you can use this data grabber to grab data through all of these various APIs and add them to your reports, saving you a ton of time from having to pull that data manually. And finally, data visualization. So there's a couple of different tools in here. First off is Google Sheets. It's not strictly a data viz tool, but you can put a number of pretty graphs in here, particularly with the help of plugins and additional bits and pieces. And it's a great way to share data and to kind of begin that dashboarding process and making things more simple for yourself. You've then got a plugin for Google Sheets, the Supermetrics plugin. Does a lot more than the Excel plugin can do. And again, it's free up to a point. I think it's free for the first 30 days and to use it for only GA. Well worth a go as well. If Google Sheets is important to your business and your workflow, highly encourage you to check that out and see what it can do for you. Next up, we've got Google Data Studio. Anyone using this within their businesses? A lot more hands, right? Good. So you already know how great this is and the value it can have, particularly if you're already tied into the Google stack. Really helpful. Good for dashboarding. Perhaps not so good for other things if you're not so Google-centric, but very helpful nonetheless. Microsoft Power BI. Simon, don't put your hand up, but anyone else using this? Yeah, there's a few people, brilliant. So this I also love for reporting, but it's so much more than a reporting tool. I also really love it for analysis, using it to visualize your data and really have a deep dive into what's going on in your accounts and using it to try and find insights. Again, completely free to use. Highly recommend that if you haven't already checked that out, that you do. So tools like these are your pathway to automation success. Having things like this in your toolkit will give you a really good footing from which to build and progress to doing more complex stuff. So let's talk about bidding. We'll kick off talking about AdWords bid strategies. Is anyone using smart bidding at the moment? A few, particularly further back. Those of you who've raised your hands out of interest, are you mostly client-side people? Keep your hands raised if you're client-side. Right, so your agency stuff, interesting. So Google has a number of different bid strategies that you can use. Some are great, like the target ROAS, target CPA, and the outranking share can be quite helpful. The other ones I would avoid because they're quite frankly not that great, but you have the ability to take them and to test them by something like campaign experiments to see whether they work for you. You don't have to apply them across your whole account. You can apply them across 10, 20, 50% and see what happens. But it's a really good way of seeing if you can get better results from that than you can from manual bidding. In my experience, they tend to perform very well, often better than tools like DoubleClick, so it's well worth giving a go for your clients. So with campaign experiments, you can set the percentage, have Google tell you whether or not there is a winner, and you can roll out the finished change if you wish. They do need time to settle in and learn. It can be anywhere from 4 weeks up to 8 weeks, and you will see some fluctuations in that time, so don't worry. But whatever you do, do not just leave them to run. They do need to be monitored, they do need to be checked, and kind of just tweaked sometimes with those targets being amended on a daily or weekly basis. Scripts for bidding. So I've got a number of favorite scripts here that you can use to help with changing your bids within AdWords. One of them is weather-based bidding. This is a script created by the AdWords developers. You can just set a number of conditions as to how you want your bids to change based on the weather. Maybe you want to bid more when it's raining or more when it's sunny. Another script here for real-time position bidding. So for some businesses, it is very important to be seen perhaps in those top positions, or maybe for ROI reasons, you only ever want to be in position 3 or 4. You can manage that through the use of a script like this, and I'd encourage it over the use of Google's bid strategy that does the same thing, just because it then gives you more control over all the other metrics and bid modifiers in your account. 24-hour bid scheduling. AdWords only lets you change bids up to 6 times a day. Using this script from Brain Labs, you can change bids every hour if you wish, and also do the same on mobile. And there's another script I'm going to show you in a second that makes it really easy to work out what these adjustments need to be. And from here, we'll move on to analysis. So I've talked a little bit about Power BI and how useful this can be. There's a dashboard here that the guys at Bing have handily given me for a talk I'm doing next month to show how you can use Power BI to start digging into your accounts. You can select a different account here or device type on the side, and all of this data will change to reflect what you have selected. There's another chart further down that has each of the accounts broken out. I can click into a bubble and it shows me all the campaigns in that account. I can click into a campaign and it shows me the ad group performance. So it's a very nice, easy way to start visualizing and playing with your data rather than just using pivot table after pivot table in Excel. Engram Analysis. Has anyone ever done any Engram analysis? Yeah, who's familiar with what an engram is? About the same number. So an engram is a phrase consisting of a number of words known as N. So you can have 1 gram, 2 grams, 3 grams, 4 grams, all based on the number of words in a given phrase. They're important because they help give you context. And there's a script that you can use that will run in your AdWords account, and it will pull together a Google spreadsheet for you that gives you loads of insight about Ngrams. And the context is important because you don't necessarily know whether the word free is a good thing or a bad thing. Depending on the context, it can be. If you offer free delivery, it's great. But normally, we exclude the word like free from our accounts because we don't give away free things. We don't sell free things. And so understanding the context of keywords and not just looking at them in isolation is really important. And Ngrams are a really great way to find terms you just want to add in as negatives on phrase match, or maybe terms that you want to add into the account and maybe break out and give more focus to. So Bing Ads Intelligence, my favorite way to use this plugin is to help figure out the landing pages that you should use. You have an option here where you can select under more research, web page keywords. And you can use that to run on a number of different URLs, and it will give you a score for all the keywords it finds associated on that page, how relevant they are on an index scale of 0 to 1. So if you're looking to improve that landing page relevancy part of quality score, you can use this to try and find the right landing page. See which landing page will rank higher for a given query, and that's probably one you should look at using. Of course, if you find, like I did in this example, that the best page still only has a score of about 4 out of 10, then maybe you need to go to dev and ask them for a new landing page. So it's a good way to get that ammunition for any site changes. Another thing you can use Bing Ads Intelligence for is looking at seasonality to try and take some of the legwork out of forecasting. You can enter in a different set of keywords and it'll give you a breakdown on performance by month, by device, and that can be really, really helpful. And alongside that, make sure you are using the Bing and the Google keyword and campaign planners, as they also do a really good job of giving you additional insight that you can use to help that forecasting and planning process, along with something like Google Trends as well, of course. Auction Insights is another great script here that you can use. This is a Google Apps script. You download a report from Google, and what it will do is it will give you feedback on how those trends in the marketplace have changed over time. Anyone who saw Daniel's talk before lunch will have seen him mention this kind of data. And I love this particular script because what it then also lets you do, this grey line here is my average CPC, and it lets me see how the amount I'm paying has changed over time based on the relative competition. Hourly heat maps for day and device. So that 24-hour bidding script I showed you earlier, you run this script on a set of data and it gives you the feedback for what your bid changes should be. It will visualize it for you using a heat map, and it will tell you by desktop and by device what your bid changes should be for every hour of the day. So combine those two together and you've got your ad scheduling done. There's also a number of other scripts you can use for things like A/B testing. So if you want to test ad copy, and it can be quite laborious to do so with statistical significance, you can have a script that can do that for you, that can test anything in your account and email you when it's found the results. So reporting. I'm going to talk about reporting for a minute. What I want us to do is think about your regular reports. So not the ad hoc reports you run, but more the ones that you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that probably take the majority of your time. The hard, cold truth is that most of these reports probably don't get opened or read, at least not in my experience. We use Basecamp. I can see when clients are downloading reports or not downloading them, as the case may be. So we've really got to go back and think about what it is that we really need in these reports. What is it that's really going to be useful? And what we should be doing, rather than spending our time on pulling data, is asking why. Why did this thing happen this week? What did we do? What did we learn? What didn't work? What are we going to do next week? But often we can't do this because we spend so much time on the data pulling and aggregation. So we should be focusing on the metrics that are valuable to our stakeholders, asking them exactly what do you need to see in this daily report? Do you get value from it? If not, why not? What would you like to see? And rebuilding the reports accordingly. My achievable goal for you is to try and save some time in the pulling of these reports, but using a number of the tools I've shown you, it is actually possible to fully automate that reporting process with just the click of a few buttons, and the time you would have spent on pulling data, you can then instead spend on digging into the insights and writing really good commentary. So you've got 3 potential workflows for your reporting, depending on the tools you're using. If you're using Excel, if you're using Google Sheets, or if you're using a data visualization tool like Data Studio, ultimately you've got all your data sources, you have to work out how to combine them and then visualize them. Using a data viz tool or something like Google Sheets gives you the most potential for automation, but really it's about whatever works for you and what workflows are important to your business. Ultimately, that should drive the one that you choose. And it's not to say that you have to pick one or the other. There are times when you might want to use Data Studio and Power BI. You don't have to be exclusive to one platform. Every platform has its benefits and its reasons to use them. So don't feel like you need to be tied down to a specific tool set. There's plenty of reasons to use both, depending on what it is that you're going for. DoubleClick. If anyone uses DoubleClick, there's a number of great ways here that you can use DoubleClick for reporting, for web query reports that can refresh in Excel with just a single click. And their online report builder is also really great. If you're using DoubleClick Search, in my last job, I never actually had to run a daily report because the dashboards I created in DoubleClick were enough for my boss every day, and I only ever had to do the odd bespoke ad hoc report. So start simple. If you try and automate everything, you'll get overwhelmed. Begin with a daily summary dashboard, build from there, see what's useful, ask for feedback, and then iterate. So one of the things that I hear from people about what they want to do with their time and what you're going to do with all the time I'm saving you is that they want to be more strategic. But what does that even mean? What does being strategic actually mean? To me, what it really means is being able to step back and have a look at the big picture and focus on the client's objectives, making sure that we are adding value to their business, making sure that we are delivering on what they need, and that we are constantly asking why. So I've got seven wonderful things that you can do with the time that you'll be saving that arguably are going to be more impactful and more useful to your clients. Number 1, client's business objectives. So we've already talked about these, but what you need to be doing is thinking about how you can take these objectives and turn them into measurable PPC goals. Often clients will say to me, I want to drive more brand awareness, and I'll say, how are you going to measure that? Oh, I don't know. They need to be goals that we can measure in PPC, goals that make sense. If you think about how you set your personal objectives, you always want your personal objectives to be smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Our PPC objectives should be the same. So make sure that we are hitting the objectives, that you're coming up with ones that are achievable, and you're always looking at other ways to benefit the client. Number 2. Channel strategy. So in line with stepping back and taking a look at the big picture, we should be having a look at other things that we can be doing. So sometimes paid search isn't always the right channel for a client. There have been times when we've moved money into paid social or into video as a way to try and deliver on some of what else the client is trying to achieve. Sometimes it can be difficult to do that, particularly if you aren't the people who look after those other channels. It might mean giving budget up. In my experience, not being precious with budget, though, always stands you in really good stead because it shows that you're more concerned about the well-being of the client and their goals. Whether that client is someone who is paying you money or a senior stakeholder within your business, your job is to make them look good, and by showing that you're thinking about the bigger picture rather than being precious about your own money, that can only really benefit you in the long run. Number 3, attribution. So attribution is another thing like bid management that's been around for years and years, but no one's really kind of using it because often we don't know where to start. So you might be lucky enough to have access to a tool like Google Analytics where you have full data-driven attribution if you're using the 360 version, although AdWords now does some of that itself. But whatever you're doing, make sure that you do look beyond last click. Look at the place that AdWords has within the wider marketing mix, as well as what is going on within those channels, the relationship between your campaigns and your keywords. And again, make sure you know why. Audiences. So we know keywords aren't going away anytime soon, but audiences are becoming increasingly important. We should be looking at what audiences we have. Should we have any more? How should we be tailoring the creative for these audiences? And make sure that we are spending the time to really focus on those customer personas that you may already have established within your business, and that you're then using them and reflecting that within your paid search as much as you can. So that ties in with creative. We just mentioned about how you can alter that for audiences. But are we really writing impactful ad copy? If anyone saw Rowan's talk before lunch about the psychology that goes into PPC and the way that people kind of interact with things, think about that. What else can you be doing with your creative to make it really impactful? You should be spending the time on writing really good ads and crafting ad extensions, because that is one thing, at least yet, the machines are not better at humans than doing. I don't know if anyone has seen the automated ads that Google creates in AdWords. They're not terrible, but they're not great. Number 6, landing pages. While my colleagues and I always disagree over whether SEO or PPC is the best, one thing that we do both agree on is that £1 you spend on conversion rate optimization is probably the best £1 you can spend on marketing. It will have the best ROI because of how it will benefit you throughout all of the other channels and through your overall business. So spend time, if you can, on looking at landing pages. Make sure that you're looking at improvement. If you don't have access to a CRO team, use tools like Unbounce or Google Optimize to find ways to test those pages and see how you can iterate and improve. And number 7, develop new skills. Maybe you always wanted to learn to code so that you can build those landing pages. Maybe you've wanted to learn how to use Google Tag Manager or get better at Google Analytics. Take some of that time and spend it on developing your own skills and growing as a marketer. I hate the phrase T-shaped, which means you kind of know a lot about one channel, but then a bit about everything else. But it's so important because those skills are going to become ever more necessary as time goes by, and they'll make you more valuable as a marketer. But whatever you do, whether you are still manually doing everything or have some level of automation, make sure that you have the answers. Make sure that you know why mobiles perform differently to desktop, why your audiences are performing differently. Make sure that you have those answers, particularly with the time that you'll be saving. There's really no excuse. But ultimately, it all comes down to adding value. That should free up your time to add value both to your employer, to your clients, and also to you as a person in your development as a PPCer and in what you want to do as a job. So hopefully I've given you some ideas for how you can use automation and what you can do to take your campaigns through to the next level. And if you've got any questions, I'd love to hear from you afterwards or in the break. Thank you.
This was originally recorded at a Brighton SEO conference. If you want to listen to more episodes or find out about the conference itself, you can do at brightonseo.com.